Okay, I'm ready, Patty.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi. I'm Patty Laws, in case those that haven't met me or anything. And I'm actually here to talk about buyers and what I do, what I've been doing for years, and from start, when I first meet them, to the closing table. So first I want to thank everybody for coming. And so I want to know who here likes working with buyers? Everybody? Some people? Okay. Who has ever been dumped by a buyer? Okay. Me too. And that brings me up to why I do what I do. I'm going to share like a little quick story with you. When I first got licensed, it was back in '02, and I was working at Remax in downtown Hudson, because that's where my brother worked. He was licensed and I worked under him. And so I got my first set of buyers, and back then we didn't have like the internet exposure that we have now. Everybody advertising the plain dealer, and we didn't have GPS on our phone, we didn't have the smartphones. And back then you actually took buyers in your car, and that made me like very nervous, because I don't like to even drive with people that I know in my car, you know, and pay attention and stuff. So I have like no sense of direction, okay, and I'm a realtor, and oh, okay, you're supposed to know where like, everything's at. And so I had a map quest all these houses, and plus I was not familiar with Hudson at all. So I got these buyers that were from out of town, and I met with them, and I was very nervous, and I, you know, just kind of winged it a little bit, and okay, so they had to get in my car, and I was driving at the time. It was a '95 DeVille Cadillac, and it was in mint condition, but it was like this big boat of a car. I felt like I'm driving Miss Daisy around, you know, buyers are in the back, and I'm just kind of like, okay. So they're asking me questions upon the way, like, oh, well, what's that over there? I'm like, oh, there's like a lot of shopping, and they're asking me questions about like the schools, and I had no knowledge of any of the schools, and I just kind of like winged it. So I took them out probably 5 times. We probably looked at 25 houses, and then, you know, we tried to get into this one house. So I called the agent, and back then they didn't have CSS. We had to call the office, and the office would call the sellers. And they couldn't get a hold of the seller. They couldn't, I couldn't get a hold of the agent. So I drove my buyers to the outside of the house and said, well, let's just look at the outside, and we'll set it up for, you know, for the next time when you guys come in the weekends, on the weekend. So still no luck, and we get over. You know, I say goodbye. I'm like, okay, I'll set this up for, you know, this coming Saturday. And I still tried calling. Then I noticed the house went pending. So I tried calling my buyers like for 3 days. And then all of a sudden, the husband called me and he said, hey, I just want to let you know we bought a house. And I was like, what do you mean you bought a house? Like, I was like devastated. I'm like, well, I'm your agent. Like, what house did you buy? And he's like, that one that you tried getting us into, we just called the number on the sign, and then some girl showed it to us. And I gotta tell you that, so that was the first time that ever happened to me, and I was devastated. It wasn't about the commission, it wasn't about the time I put in. My feelings were very hurt. Like, how could these people do this to me? How could somebody do that to somebody? Like, I would never do that to somebody. Okay, so that's where this all started, where I'm like, okay, I don't ever want to go through this again, but I have been through this like several more times, maybe not as much, you know, for different reasons, because not everybody clicks. Sometimes you don't click with the people that you work with. And you have to find their personality type and how to, like, the right things to say and how to get along with them, but it's like always be yourself. So I decided to take a ABR class, which is Accredited Buyer Representative, and it's just like a designation that the general public doesn't really know what that is. It's just, you know, working with buyers. They don't understand the letters or anything like that. They're like, well, what's this on your license? You got all these things on there. So I learned a lot in that class, and I learned a lot about, you know, how do you have somebody be loyal to you? You know, what are you offering them in service? You know, what are the things that you can offer them? Why should they work with you? So I started to put a presentation together and decided to sit down with every single buyer before I show them houses. And to have like a meeting, because the normal buyer does not understand the whole process of, you know, from the start to finish, of all the costs that are involved and everything like that. So basically, what buyers want, buyers really don't care about your trophies, your awards, how long you've been in the business. They don't care that you're $1 million producer. They want to just find a house, and they care that you help them find that house and help them along the way. It's more, and for me, I've always worked my business, it's more about relationships than the commission. If you go chasing after the commission on the higher end houses, oh, well this one will pay this, it'll never work out the way that it should. But if you work in your buyer's best interest, truly work in their best interest, the money will follow. Believe me, it'll snowball like after that if you work in everybody's interest. So anyways, so I actually thought, well, how can I provide value? So the first thing is, back in the day, they didn't have the internet like we do now. They didn't have the Zillow and all this stuff where buyers are finding houses now saying, hey, I want to see these houses. So the value back then was, hey, I have a free list of homes. Would you like to come into the office and we'll talk about, you know, the home buying process and all that. And so that's why I used to get people to come in before. But so now it's a lot different, and I get a lot of referral past clients, you know, business and stuff like that. So the very first thing I do when somebody calls me and says, hey, you know, so-and-so referred me to you, I want to start, you know, I want to look for a house. So the first thing I talk about is their pre-approval. And have you been pre-approved yet? And usually it's no. Or they're like, oh, I'm going to go to my bank. And I don't push the issue at first with like recommending a lender, but I've worked with a lot of lenders. Their closing costs are a lot different. They work all different ways, and I like to set people up with who I'm comfortable with and I know that they're going to be taken care of. So a lot of times, like for instance, like Steve Girding, what I'll do is like say, okay, get pre-approved, give Steve's number, and then they'll call, and Steve will get them pre-approved. I do not take them out until they are pre-approved, and I don't set up my first meeting with them until that. And okay, so say that I got this buyer pre-approved up to 150, Steve's like, okay, they could go up to 150, you know, the closing costs are gonna be X amount of dollars, and so then I say, okay, well, you're pre-approved, that's great, let's meet. We usually meet at like a Panera or something, and then I, you know, introduce myself, because people, when they meet you in person, it's just a lot more personable than over the phone. And again, you know, when I go in there, I'm like, oh, I am Patty Law, and I do this, I would do this month. Make it about them. It's never about you, it's about them. And so, you know, you want to like meet with them and just kind of like, you know, where do you live at? You know, what are you looking for? Where are you know, is this your first house? And one of my favorite things to do is work with first-time home buyers. But so the pre-approval is the first part, and I don't go over any payments with them. I let the loan officer do that. But what I do is the closing costs, because I work with a lot of first-time home buyers that just have down payment money. They don't have extra money for their closing costs. So I start explaining all of that to them. You know, like, okay, first of all, okay, you're pre-approved up to 150, your payments are gonna be $1,100 a month. What are you comfortable spending each month? Oh, well, I only want to spend $800. So then we're not gonna look at a $150,000 house. I get that all up front, because I'm not gonna waste my time or their time in falling in love with a house and just to get there and write an offer, and then they can't afford the payment. So that's why I like to have everything out in the open up front. So I talk to them about, I first bring out the agency to consumer guide, and I explain our agency relationship, okay, and that's important. So I let them know that I am, you know, I can represent you as your realtor and represent your best interests, and I'm gonna do everything from negotiating on the sale of a house. I can show you every house on the market, not just RE/MAX houses, because a lot of people think like, oh, we just gotta look at RE/MAX houses. I can show you for sale by owners, and so then they're like, oh, okay, and a lot of them, they don't even know that. And so then I get into the agency relationship and talk about if it's my listing and dual agency and all that kind of stuff. And usually, a dual agency, in all my years, I mean, every once in a while you'll sell like your own listing and things like that. But for the most part, you know, I'm representing the buyer, somebody else is representing the seller and everything. So as I start talking about this, and they start bringing up like little things about maybe their kids or this, and then, you know, you build this rapport with them, and that's like so important, because, you know, you're generally, you want to know about them and know that you care, and that's like what the people want and everything. So basically, the closing cost part I go over, and I tell them, I'm like, okay, if you're going up to 150 and you need $3,500 in closing, you know, now in this market it's different. Every year the market changes. So in this particular market, I may tell the buyer that if you want to put an offer on a house, these houses are going very quick, and you might not, if you say you're going to sleep on it, you're not going to like be in that house, because that's how they're, and I explain that to them. And explain to them that when you're writing an offer on a house, if you're asking for closing costs, it's already like X amount off the top of the price, so we might have to like, come up to the asking price or sometimes a little bit over. And so they understand all of that. And then I start going through everything that I have like on these sheets here. So we did the pre-approval, I set up the meeting, consumer guide, then I start explaining what earnest money is, and how that works, and how much, and earnest money is not really required in a real estate transaction, but in our market, it's kind of a, makes the seller feel more secure that you have something into the game here. And then I talk about the cost, the approximate cost of a home inspection, and then 1 year of homeowner's insurance, and then the closing costs. And so many buyers that I sit down with, the loan officer is like, that they pick like one of those loan companies out there on the internet, and they don't even go over all this other stuff with them. And a lot of these buyers that I work with, that first time home buyers, they're like, oh my God, well that's gonna be another $1,000. I gotta like save for this, or so they're so grateful that I'm sharing all this information with them. And then they know that, and then I also tell them, do not spend any money, do not on any big purchases, do not buy a car, do not do any of that, because your whole pre-approval could just go down the tubes and stuff like that. And so then I start asking them their price range, and we determine their price and then the areas they're looking at. Now you might have somebody spending that's way up like an $80,000 buyer, and I truly do work with everybody in every price range. I mean, a lot of agents that have been in the business as long as I have, they don't agree upon that. They're like, oh, don't work with anybody at 100, but this is the way I truly work for the people, and I do a lot of transactions a year, and it's really about the people, and the money will follow, the transactions will follow. And if you take care of them, they may have their cousin, their brother, they're going to refer you. And I do get a lot of referral business, and it's just, they remember that transaction, they remember that you working on their best half. So basically, after I explain all this stuff to them, I also talk about the for sale by owners. I'm just like, give me their name and I'll call them. Most for sale by owners, I don't even do have them sign a paper when I go to be on my commission. I just walk in there with confidence, and if they like the house, then I negotiate with the seller to pay me a 3% commission or whatever they will pay me, because I'm not going to let my buyer lose out on a house because of that. And if that did happen, it did happen to me one time in the very beginning. I was a brand new agent, and I didn't know how it worked, so I just told my buyer, I'm like, well, you have to pay my $4,500 commission. And she's like, oh, and she paid it. And then people in my office were like, how did you get her to pay it? I'm like, I just told her that she had to. But I didn't have that fear in me, because I just thought that that's how it worked. Now I'd be like, oh gosh, but it always ends up like working out and everything. I also explain to them about open houses, and I tell them that you walk into that house, you either let me register you, let me go with you, let me call the agent and let them know that you are coming in, because if you go into that house and you end up wanting to buy that house, that agent would be the procuring cause, and all these houses that I just showed you, all my work that I put in with you, basically I'm like out of the picture here. And they're like, oh no, we don't want that, And so then I explained to them how I get paid. A lot of buyers think that we get paid hourly, that we get paid for taking them out to houses for our time. They have no idea that we're just paid on commission. But I let them know it's not going to cost you anything to work with me. The seller always pays my fee, and I'm going to provide all these services for you. I'm going to set you up on the client portal. I'm going to send you houses. Anything that you see on Zillow or any of those other companies, a lot of that information is not accurate. I mean, how many times have I gotten houses that are under contract, that are pending, and the buyer's like, oh, this is on the list, and it's like, no, it's not accurate information. So I always try to bring them back to me to inquire within, through me with everything. So I tell them how I get paid, and I tell them that, I get paid when you buy a house, but I'm never going to rush you into a house. I'm never going to, say, oh my God, Susan, we just looked at 65 houses. Let's hope that doesn't happen. I've been there with that though. Show somebody 10 houses, show somebody 30 houses. But I'm the agent that will go and just kind of go through the motions with things until they kind of have to see everything. Depends on the client, depends on what type of client you have. And then I tell them that, the seller pays my fee, and they're like, wow, all this is free. And then I tell them that these houses that are listed, because listing a house, they say, what do you owe on it? and they're like, I owe like 200, so I'm gonna ask like 300 for the house. And they don't base it on the market conditions. The seller is basing on it, the money that they're gonna get in their pocket. So it's up to me as your agent to pull the comparable properties when you find something and to go back, you know, to pull the comps and let you know my honest opinion. And yes, this house is worth it according to the comps, or no, it's not. If you still want to move forward with an offer, we can do that. And you know, the appraisal will also protect them too. The appraisal, the bank is not going to loan them the money if the house isn't appraised. So I talked to them about that. And then I just said that I could give you, you know, provide you all this stuff, be your exclusive agent. I'm like, but, you know, and if things work out and you want me to be your agent, I said, the only thing I expect in return is just your loyalty. And they're always like, yeah, like, and then by the time we walk out of that meeting at Starbucks or wherever we're at, I mean, they're all like high five, they can't wait to go see houses, they can't wait to, you know, just to get the process started. And that really has helped me build a bond with the people in the relationship. You have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you take your laptop with you? Because I found it really effective for buyer's consultations, that if you show them the MLS and show them once their criteria is more specific, that it limits their options, but also what go showings are, and that there are certain showing limitations if there's go showings. And we show a house that day. I've gotten houses under contract same day as buyers.
That's good. No, that's actually very good. And no, I have not taken my laptop with me yet to do that. I kind of just do this talking thing, but actually that's a really good idea to do that, and they could see. Because sometimes there's things that, yeah, I want Broadview Heights, and you're like, well, you're up to $150,000, you're not gonna find a house in Broadview Heights for that, or it's gonna be a fixer-upper house. I also talked to them about that. I work with a lot of FHA buyers, and I explained to them that some houses are not gonna pass FHA. I mean, peeling paint is like one thing, but I mean, if the house is in need of like a total makeover, they're not gonna, the financing is not gonna go through FHA. And only if the seller accepts FHA and they're willing to do some of the repairs on it. But I usually talk to the listing agent if I have a buyer that really wants to see a house, and they tell me why. But some sellers, they have this concept out there because their realtor tells them FHA is terrible and don't use FHA. And to be honest with you, I have not had, back in the day, like I would say like maybe 15 years ago, you know, FHA, I had things that they were flagging, you know, roofs on the houses and stuff, but anymore, it's usually peeling paint, and it's an easy fix. But I haven't had like any major problems, but the sellers have this fear in them that they don't want to accept an FHA contract because their agents tell them it's going to cost them money. But there's other loans for that too. If they want a fixer-upper house, there's those, you know, and they can talk to like Steve Birding and the loan officer about that, those type of loans and stuff. One of the biggest things that I noticed is, okay, so once I set them up on the portal, okay, and then I got included with this is the questions that I ask them. I go through like all that stuff. You want to make sure, you know, what's most important to you buying a house, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, do you want a yard, what style house, you know, does any of that matter? And they might say, oh, I want exactly 1 acre. I'm like, well, what if we found something for a half an acre and it felt big enough? I don't want to exclude you from like seeing anything. Can I still set that up on your list? And you should say, yeah, just send it to me anyways. I wanted a 2-car garage. And a lot of the specific things I found when showing buyers, they end up buying something totally opposite of what they told me the criteria was because they love the house enough and that 2-car garage didn't matter to them. So it's important to get all of that, and then as you put them on the portal, that's what I do is put them on there and they start getting these listings. And one thing I learned too with this new MLS thing, you have to, okay, if you have multiple people on the client portal and they respond to that message, you're not going to see it unless you go into your messages. I've missed, and so I tell them, I'm like, if you have a specific message for me, do it in a separate email because I don't always see that because they all kind of go together. So then the biggest thing is communicating, you know, going into a house, you know, and I'm no expert here with like, you know, with, oh my God, I'm not a roofer, I'm not an electrician, any of that stuff, but one time I had a buyer's dad go with us, and a lot of parents think like, my God, this is my kid, like they don't realize you're working in their kid's best interest, and he's like, look at how old that furnace is, and I'm like, excuse me, sir, that's an incinerator, that's not a furnace. And, you know, so they're gonna try to protect their kids and things like that. But what I usually do when I go into a house, I mean, we're gonna look at the major thing. What is the price of the house? You know, how old is the roof? You know, how old is the electrical box, the furnace, central air, you know, see, and you kind of know if it's priced accordingly, and your buyers will get a good knowledge of the market as they start going out and looking at these houses with you. And they're gonna have more knowledge than most of the real estate agents out here in the industry and be like, yeah, that's, you know, but then you gotta put them in their place if they keep telling you, well, that's really overpriced. And then you gotta be like, well, no, not for this area. This is actually right in line. And I'm just honest with everybody, and I'll tell them like what I feel. And I'm never pushy, ever. I mean, I'm probably, because I'm a people pleaser, and I'm more like, well, I don't want to be that pushy. That's just not naturally for me. But I mean, there's times where I'm like, gosh, are they gonna find something? But I never have them sense that, do that like in front of them. But then I have to say, like, is there some couples that you might have to meet with again and again and again to say, okay, now what are you? I just showed you all these houses that match your criteria. What are Charlie's? Like, I showed Charlie. How many houses did I show you?
100.
Probably 100. That was when I was doing the business. Yes, Charlie was one of my clients, and Charlie was the guy that even if he didn't like a house, he'd want to go through the whole thing and look in the attic. It's a big thing looking in the attic. But I love you guys for that. It's like, you know what? I mean, you guys stuck through with me and with you, and it was like, yes, you know. And now look at you. Now you're an agent. So, so I never. Buyers can sense when you are. Feel like, you know, oh God, I'm showing you this house, you're just kind of staggering in there. They could sense your energy very, very good. And so you always want to be like on a positive mode, even if you're like, you know, like, God, we have to do something, but maybe like sit them down again and go over their criteria again of what they want. A lot of the young buyers like to text, they don't like to talk on the phone. So I always ask up front, I'm like, how do you like to communicate? Do you want to, are you a texter? Are you, oh yeah, just text. Because like, did you ever text somebody? And I'm more like, I like to talk, but I'm learning to text a lot better. I mean, I can text, but I'm just saying, like, talking wise. And they'll text me, then I'll call them, and they don't answer the phone. I'm like, you were just like right there. So you want to communicate with them like that. And I actually think it's pretty cool if you text, especially if you're like older and you're like, oh my God, yeah, they're hip. They're texting me back, okay. You know, some little emojis, smiley faces, and hey, the house is nice or whatever. So it's just all about the connection with them and everything. And I just, one more thing here. So last year, so I'll be going on my 18th year in real estate, and last year I had a year that I wanted to quit the business. I wanted to, like, everything that went wrong, but it was all about my energy. I had a client out of town client that was a friend from high school I took out, and we looked at a ton of houses for probably a year, okay? And just come out every weekend, 13, 14 houses at a time. And I had to let him go because it just was like we were writing offers and it just wasn't, I already put in this time, and I was kind of aggravated. I should have just kind of pulled him on the side and looked, what are you looking for? How can I feel like I can't help you? But because he was a friend from the past and I knew him, I just got so mad at him. And so I let him go. And then a week later he called me back and he said, I really, you know, want to give you an opportunity. I called this other agent to show me a few houses. Do you, you know, want? I'm like, okay. So then we kind of talked things out, and then I said, well, you have to cancel those 3 houses you set up with that agent if you want me to come. He's like, well, I can't do that. I told her that we weren't working with anybody. I'm like, well, you haven't even met her yet. And I was stubborn, and I said, well, no, then I'm not going ahead and work with Susie. You know what I mean? I don't know what her name was, but anyways, so I lost that buyer, and because of my own stubbornness in some ways, and maybe not communicating the right way about what he wanted and what his family wanted, and it bothered me all summer long, okay? I just kept on focusing on it. I couldn't let it go. But by not letting that go, so I'd go on to my next listing appointment, and, you know, everything was going good. And then all of a sudden I kept that darn buyer of mine, that buyer. Well, it affected my performance. I didn't see it at the time. I saw it after this year was up. It affected my performance on that, and the people are like, you seem like you're too busy for me. It's like, we want a new agent. Oh, God, another one. What's happening to me? Like, this, another one. Okay, so now they fired me. Okay, then it happened 2 more times this year. I was working with a buyer. I thought I did everything right, and maybe I did do everything right. But it was maybe my sense of like, oh, here I am going again to show all these houses. It's my attitude. Even though I didn't directly say that to them, they felt it. And they fell off the face of the earth, blocked me on Facebook, and then I see their parents, and they bought this house, and how could they do that? What the heck am I doing wrong? And then it happened one more time. I'm like, I got fired so much last year than in my whole career, like combined, because that usually you'll lose a buyer here and there. And I had to take a look at myself and my business, and what am I doing? What can I do to better my business?